Can I take your first and last name as well?
Lucas Sundelius.
Spell it out.
Sundelius.
Lucas, just kind of walk us through how rigorous or not that deliberation was and why it took that.
Sure. Yeah, it was a lot. I thought originally going in it wasn't going to take as long as it did. But, when we looked at all the evidence, there's, the smallest details that I didn't notice when the state was showing it to us that turned out to be super important. And, it became increasingly more important to me how in detail you have to be about everything, because you're deciding another man's life. And that it was rigorous. It was kind of chaotic at times. We were not agreeing on things. The majority of the first day we were pretty divided. But then, we kind of locked in a little bit. That second day we started really examining the evidence well. And it was stressful. It was quite stressful. I had no idea what it was going to be like. Didn't expect it to be like that. But yeah, it was definitely something.
Lucas, how important was it to you to get this right?
Oh boy. I don't know if I can put it into words really. That sounds kind of corny, but I'm from South Minneapolis, and I know how that rocked that Lake Street surrounding community pretty hard. And I think it was really it was tough to see the families in court. That was really grounding. So, as much as it is doing it for the law, it's also doing it for the community. And I think we made the right decision, and I know that a lot of people are going to be happy about that.
And sir, what was the biggest point of discussion? Like if somebody were to say, what took so long, what would be kind of the main answer to that question?
Sure. There was a lot of, I don't know how much I can say. Well, I guess the trial's over.
Whatever you want to.
Some of Mr. Derrick Thompson's belongings were in the Escalade, quite a few of them. And so then we couldn't rule out, he was in the car at the time of the accident. We had a long conversation about whether or not there was a second person in the car along with Mr. Derrick Thompson. That took us out. We talked about, sorry. It's all right. We talked about whether or not there was another person in the car for like 3 hours straight on the first day. It was kind of maddening almost, because we were just going back and forth. We make a bit of progress, we check some other evidence, something else comes up, back to square one. But I think it was kind of the fact that his hat, his key fob, his phone were all in the car, which brought up a little doubt, because again, you want to prove it beyond reasonable doubt, and we did it. In the end, we proved beyond a reasonable doubt that Derrick Thompson was driving it, but there was a little bit where we didn't know whether or not somebody else was in the car, and then by that process, you don't know for certain who was driving before you kind of figure out all the other information. So that was definitely it.
How important was DeMarco's testimony in reaching this decision?
Fairly important. The answers were short, but they were still important answers. A lot of the stuff about how he testified that there are multiple sets of keys to the other car kind of had us spinning in circles, because a key fob the key to the Challenger, was found in the Escalade, and it's one that you can see on video. DeMarco is swinging around at the rental lot. So then, you're thinking like, okay, well, why are his keys there? And but then when it was testified that there were multiple sets of keys, I think it got a little easier in how he said himself that he wasn't there, that he was out in Woodbury, I think it was. It got, it cleared the path a lot. We still obviously had a lot of work to do, because his testimony wasn't everything, but that certainly helped quite a bit.
What made you get over the hump on the murder? That you thought it was more than just criminal vehicular homicide, it was murder?
I think the part that hung us up on was the indifference to life aspect of it, because we had a very long conversation about whether or not obviously it wasn't intentional, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he's not indifferent to it. So we had a very long conversation about whether or not being indifferent to the loss of life was, something that he was, on his mind. And we, determined that through his actions, he was indifferent to the loss of life. I think the thing that kind of hit us was going, 116 miles an hour down that exit ramp on a second. I think any reasonable person would assume that somebody doing that is indifferent to anything that happens after that.
Last thing I want to ask, you're a young guy. These were young women, potentially maybe even within your age range. How significant is that to you in the course of your life? Where does this rank, being part of this and its experience for you, how does it stack up with life experiences today?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's a lot, it's a lot. And since I got on this story, I've been thinking about those families every day in the sense of I can't even imagine, how it would feel. No parent should ever have to bury their child. And the fact that it happened to 5 families kind of, it was weighing on me. It was weighing on me a lot. Especially, again, I said earlier, I'm from the area. I remember when it happened. It was only 2 years ago. So it was a lot, and I think it's something that I don't know if cherish is the right word because that process is certainly not cherishable, but it is important, and I'm glad I did it.
Just one more question on the process.
Sure.
Was there ever any of the jurors who were like, I think he's not guilty, or was it just getting to the point of guilty?
Getting to the point of guilty, because we were hung up, like I said, on that first day of deliberation. We were really hung up on if DeMarco was in the car or not, because then you couldn't rule out if he was driving or not. We all knew Derrick was in the car based on literally everything we saw. We know he's in the car. He gets out of the car first. But I don't think any of us sitting in there thought that he was not a major aspect of it. And then it just took a couple hours of, blowing through the evidence and realizing that, we got our guy. And we know it was him, it wasn't.
What was the ultimate thing that you thought he was the driver, Derrick?
We actually looked at some stuff with the car. He's a tall guy, 6'5", 6'6", whatever he was. The thing that kind of pushed us over the edge, because we had a lot of good information, but the thing that really confirmed it for us was actually where the seat was in terms of how far it was pushed back, because that man had long legs, and his brother is not 6'5". If you're driving at 6'5", you're going to want leg room. And it sounds kind of dumb, but it's that was one thing that kind of, because we were all right on the edge, and then we saw that and we were like, okay, I think it's him rather than his brother. So that was kind of the last piece for us.
Could you say and spell your name one more time, please?
You need both first and last name?
Please.
Lucas, Lucas, Sundelius, Sundelius.
Lucas, were you assigned a jury number?
Yes. 9.
You were number 9. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Lucas.
No, thank you. Guys.
Appreciate it.